Hello future CA, welcome back to my channel again. Your one-stop guide for everything related to CA exam. So if you are appearing for the CA Inter September 26 and GST is one subject where you are still wondering, what should I study first, which chapters are important, what exactly is applicable for the September 26 exam, how should I prepare for the MCQ, and how should I write descriptive answer to maximize my marks, then this video is extremely important for you. So the ICAI BoS Fortnightly Programme has covered several important points relating to GST preparation, revision strategy, important area, question paper pattern, exam writing techniques, commonly committed errors and much more. So in today's video, I am going to simplify the entire session for you and tell you the most important takeaways for your CA Inter September 26 GST exam. So make sure you watch this video till the end because some of the points discussed today can directly help you to improve your marks. Guys, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe for more CA exam related strategies, tips, updates and guidance. So I have prepared a last 4.5 day revision planner for the CA Inter Advanced Accounting. This is for September 26 exam and the planner starts from 28th of August. So in the planner from 28th August to 31st August, I have covered the whole day, and for the 1st of September, the planner covers the first half of the day because the exam is in the second half. So in this planner, I have given slots for revising each chapter and each unit. And there are also separate slots for revising RTP, MTP, previous exam paper, annexure and schedule 3 of the Companies Act. So if you want a structured and stress-free revision planner, the link is in the description and the pinned comments below. Do check it out. So the first point discussed in the webinar was, don't do selective study but prioritize smartly. So this is one of the biggest takeaway from the session. So the session highlights section-wise weightage of GST. So yes, you should prioritize high weightage areas. But prioritizing high weightage areas does not mean completely ignoring the remaining syllabus. In fact, this session specifically cautions you all against selective preparation in the important GST areas. So your ideal approach should be complete the entire syllabus. Then, while revising, prioritize high weightage areas and practice extensively. So now let's come to the most important part. So the GST syllabus has been divided into different sections based on their weightages. So section number 1, this comprises introductory concept and constitutional aspects. So this section carries a relatively lower weightage of around 0 to 5%. So you should not completely ignore this area. And it should not consume the majority of your preparation time also. So this area comprises of chapter 1. That is GST in India and introduction. Then section 2. This is the most important section. So this is the section you absolutely cannot afford to take lightly. The session indicates that this section can carry approximately 50% to 80% of the paper. It covers the core GST concepts from the earlier chapters through the ITC related areas. So the important topics include charge of GST, concept of supply, composite and mixed supply, exemption, composition levy, classification, place of supply, time of supply, value of supply, input tax credit, computation of GST liability. So if you are short on time, remember this. Chapters 2 to chapter 8 deserve maximum attention. So the BOS session recommends devoting more than 50% of your GST study time to these chapters because of their significance. And also, please don't prepare these chapters only from theoretical perspective. You should be able to apply the provisions also. And one more thing is section 2, which we discussed just now. From the section 2 itself, the compulsory question will come, which will be relating to computation of net GST payable. Now let's go ahead with section 3. So section 3 comprises of chapters from chapter 9 to chapter 15. And the weightage is, it carries 20% to 45% weightage. And it includes areas such as registration, tax invoice, credit notes and debit notes, e-way bill, accounts and records, payments, returns. So this section carries the second highest weightage after the core GST provision. So your priority should be broadly as follows. First, the core GST provisions, that is the section 2. Then the procedural law, that is the section 3. And then the introduction and the constitutional aspect, that is the section 1. So this is a much better strategy than randomly jumping from one chapter to another chapter. So GST is not about just remembering provision. Another major takeaway is skill-wise weightage. So the session indicates that approximately 55% to 85% questions in the exam can test application and analytical skills, while 45% can test comprehension and knowledge based. So what does this mean? So it means that simply reading the provisions again and again is not enough. You have to practice applying the provisions to practical situation. Analytical skill means you must understand how to apply the provisions as well. For example, if you know a provision theoretically, but you cannot determine its treatment when a practical transaction is given, then your preparation is incomplete. So while studying every chapter, ask yourself, can I apply this provision to the question? So that is the level of preparation you should aim for. You should just not have theoretical knowledge. You should know how to apply the provision as well. The next important study guideline was don't waste time on excluded areas. So now let's talk about some important study guidelines mentioned in the session. So GST rate. So you need not spend your preparation time memorizing the GST rates. The rates will be provided in the question itself. So the important message here is know your study guidelines. So check the study guidelines from the BOS knowledge portal. Don't spend hours preparing areas that are outside your syllabus, while neglecting the areas that are actually important for the syllabus. And also in the session it was emphasized that the study material and statutory updates are prepared in accordance with the study guidelines. Now the next topic covered is which law is applicable for the September 26 exam. So this is something absolutely important which you have to know. So for the September 26 GST exam, the applicable law is based on the Finance Act 2025. Along with the relevant notification and circulars issued or becoming effective up to 28 February 2026. So the most important date you need to remember is 28 February 2026. So this is the cutoff date highlighted in the BOS session. So if a provision was amended after this cutoff date, that subsequent change is not to be considered for your September 26 exam. Also, while solving questions, practicing past exam papers or revising amendments, always keep the applicable cutoff date in the mind. Now coming to the question paper pattern. So GST carries 15 marks for MCQ and 35 marks is for descriptive question. So the MCQs can include case scenario based MCQ as well as independent application based MCQ. So the session highlights that all MCQs are compulsory and there are some important rules for attempting the MCQ. So don't guess the answers. Don't blindly use elimination techniques. Don't select the answer simply because it looks right. Apply the relevant provisions of the law and then only select the most appropriate answer. This is particularly important because the question may give you options where two choices initially appear possible, but one is the most appropriate based on the facts and the applicable provision. So remember the provisions and try to correlate with the provision and then only answer the MCQ question. So the descriptive portion carries 35 marks. Under this, the first question is compulsory and it carries 15 marks. After that, there are 3 questions out of which you have to attempt any 2. Therefore, the optional question carries 10 marks each. So the first compulsory question requires special attention because it's for 15 marks. So the most important question, that is the compulsory question, this will come from section 2 and mostly the question will be relating to net GST payable. So the BOS session specifically highlights the importance of the question involving net GST payable in cash, because this is usually asked in the compulsory question. This question generally requires integration of provisions from the supply chapter through the ITC chapter. And the session also points out that this concept appears in the September 26 RTP as well. So please don't leave this topic thinking it's too lengthy, I'll skip it. You have to practice it properly because this will come as a part of the compulsory question. Next, some tips were given on how to tackle this compulsory question. So whenever you see a question requiring computation of the net GST payable in cash, think in a structured manner. So broadly your approach should be as follows. Step number 1, identify outward supply. So first step is to separate the outward supplies from the inward supply. Step number 2, compute output tax liability. So for every outward supply, determine the applicable GST treatment. You need to consider the relevant aspects, such as whether the transaction is taxable, whether it is exempt, whether it is composite or mixed supply, and what is the applicable rate. Place of supply, whether the transaction is intrastate or interstate. Then step number 3, identify inward supplies. For inward supplies, determine the applicable GST treatment and calculate the tax. Then step number 4, check ITC eligibility. Don't automatically take every inward supply to your ITC calculation. Check whether ITC is available or blocked. Then step number 5, check reverse charge. Identify whether GST is payable under reverse charge on any inward supply. Step number 6, set off ITC against output tax. Then arrive at the remaining tax liability. Step number 7, add applicable reverse charge liability. Finally, add the GST payable under reverse charge to arrive at the net GST payable in cash. So in simple terms, the computation will be as follows. Output tax liability less eligible ITC plus GST payable under reverse charge. This is equal to net GST payable in cash. So this structured approach is specifically highlighted in the session. So next very important thing was discussed in this session. That is the common mistake, inward supply versus outward supply. So when all the transactions are given together, it was noticed that students sometimes make the mistake of not properly distinguishing between inward and outward supplies. So a classic example is sponsorship services. So the important question here is, who is paying the consideration? The person paying the consideration is generally the recipient, while the person receiving the consideration is the supplier. So before jumping into tax calculation, first understand the transaction. Don't rush through the wording. A small mistake in identifying the nature of the transaction can affect the entire answer. So the next important point mentioned in the webinar was, don't just write the final answer, give reasoning as well, because there is stepwise marking. So this is one of the most important exam writing tips from the entire session. It has been noticed that students often calculate the amount correctly, but fail to provide reasoning, and this can lead to loss of mark. So the session specifically emphasizes stepwise marking. Marks are allotted not only for numerical accuracy, but also for reasoning or explaining notes supporting the treatment. Therefore, wherever required, explain why you have treated a particular transaction in a particular manner. And one important thing is, you don't have to obsess over remembering every section number. So if you remember the correct section number, write the correct section number. If you don't remember the section number, please don't quote the wrong section number. What is more important is that you clearly state the relevant provision and the reasoning. So instead of merely writing the final number, that is the final answer, explain the logic behind your treatment. So next, some tips were given on how to approach the case scenario. So case scenario booklet is an important resource mentioned in the session. It contains a substantial number of case scenarios for practice. So for solving the case scenario, there is an important method that you should follow. So don't immediately read the answer. Instead, Follow the following steps. So step number 1, read the case scenario carefully. Then step number 2, attempt the MCQ yourself. And step number 3, arrive at the answer. Then step number 4, check the correct answer and explanation. Because if you read the answer first, you might feel you might know this. But when you actually solve it independently, then only you will be able to identify your actual gaps. That's why practice first and then check the answers later on. So another excellent strategy from the BOS session is the sequence you should follow for every chapter. You have to follow the following sequence. Step number 1, understand the concept. Step number 2, prepare concise revision notes. So after studying each chapter, try to prepare notes for the chapter. You can use these notes 1.5 days before the exam for revising. Then step number 3, attempt the test your knowledge question in the study material. And step number 4, in your study material there are relevant quiz also. So try to solve that also. Then step number 5, this test your knowledge and quiz, all this you have to attempt without checking the answer. Then in the step number 5, you will compare your answer with the suggested answer. And step number 6, you will identify your mistakes. Then in step number 7, you will go back and revise the weak areas. So only after completing this entire process, you can consider that you have completed the chapter properly. Session specifically recommends attempting questions before looking at the suggested answer, so that you can identify your actual conceptual gaps. So the next important point covered in the webinar was how to prepare for revision. So when you are studying, at that time itself prepare your revision material. Either prepare your own concise notes or use the Saransh. But there is one important suggestion. Your last day revision material should be customized to your own preparation. If there are certain concepts that you repeatedly forget, include them. And if there are any particular exceptions, provisions or examples that you tend to get confused with, add them in your revision notes. The goal is to create a compact revision resource that you can revise quickly before the examination. And the most important mistake noticed was studying only the important provisions. So this was highlighted many times in the session because it's very important. So the section wise weightage is important and chapter 2 to 8 are important because this carries significant marks. But this does not mean that you will ignore the remaining topics. So this session specifically cautions against selective study in the core areas. So for example, in ITC, sometimes it was noticed that students prepare only section 16 and 17 and they neglect the other provision. These questions can also be asked in the exams. So don't ignore any provision. So your strategy should be prioritized, but don't blindly eliminate. So now let's see the final revision strategy. So your GST preparation should broadly follow this following sequence. Phase 1, complete the concept. Read the study material, understand the provisions. Don't merely memorize. Phase 2, practice. That is, practice, test your knowledge. Practice the quiz questions given in the study material and go through the case scenario booklet and other relevant practical questions. Then phase 3, identify the gaps. So once you finish practicing, compare your answer with the suggested answer and identify where you are making the mistakes. Then phase 4, revision. So revise your summaries and customize the revision notes. Phase 5, updates. So revise the applicable statutory updates and amendments. Remember, the cutoff date for the September 26 exam is 28th February. Then phase 6, RTP and past year papers. So ensure you practice this. Then phase 7, mock test paper. So attempt both the series of mock test paper under the exam-like condition. Then phase 8, final revision. Use your concise revision material for rapid revision before the examination. So a quick checklist for the CA Inter September 26 GST. So before I end this video, take a screenshot of this checklist. So for the September 26 GST, make sure you have covered the following: applicable law, that is the Finance Act 25. Cutoff date is 28th February 2026. Chapter 2 to Chapter 8 are the highest priority chapter. Procedural laws are important. Study guidelines. Go through the study guidelines from the BOS Knowledge Portal. Don't waste time on excluded areas. Go through the study material, test your knowledge question, quiz questions given in the study material. Go through the case scenario booklet. Go through the RTP, past exam paper. Go through the statutory updates. And also go through the MTPs. And the important question is net GST payable in cash. Don't ignore this question. Do as much as the MCQ practice as possible. And also ensure you present the answer in a stepwise way. And give appropriate reasoning because stepwise marking is there. And most importantly, don't leave questions just because they look lengthy. Approach all the question in the exam step by step, because even if you don't complete the entire question or if the final answer is wrong, still you will get marks for each of the step. So these were the most important takeaways from the ICAI BoS Fortnightly Programme for your CA Inter September 26 GST exam. So if I had to summarize the entire session in just a few lines, I would just say don't study randomly. Prioritize intelligently. Don't rely only on memorization. Focus on application and analysis. Practice before looking at the answer. Revise the statutory updates. Practice RTP, past exam papers and MTP. And in the examination, don't just write the final answer. Give appropriate reasoning also wherever required. Because stepwise marking can help you earn marks for the correct steps even when your final answer is not perfect. And finally, remember that GST carry 50% mark in the taxation paper. So if you master GST properly, you are strengthening a very significant portion of your CA Inter taxation paper. So if you found this video useful, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and also share the video with your CA Inter friends who are appearing for the September 26 exams. So start implementing these points from today itself. Don't wait for the perfect time to start revision. Plan your remaining days. Complete your chapters, practice consistently, revise smartly and keep moving forward. All the best for your exams, and I will see you all in the next video.